What's the most vile, disgusting thing you've seen someone do in public? I lived in San Francisco for 17 years. I've seen homeless people giving jetic blowjobs, shitting on the sidewalk, shooting up, etc. Saw a guy go up to a flock of pigeons. Somehow managed to grab one and seemingly break its neck. Filthy pigeonses. Did some work at a train station a while ago. One morning the station master called me into the office, where they were reviewing the CCTV footage from the night before. Saw a woman walk up to the drinking fountain, hitch up her dress, straddle the fountain and proceed to wash her vagina right there in the fountain while the other commuters watched on. Haven't touched a public fountain since. Homeless dude in LA gets up from his perch, walks over to put his back against a nice marble wall, slides down to a sitting position and just shits down the wall. Gets up like nothing happened and goes back to his spot. I'm not sure which thing I was most bothered by. The fact that he did that, or the fact that nobody gave a FCK that it was happening. Or the fact that there was no wiping involved. Old woman on a public train in a wheelchair. Right in the middle of the aisle, she had her pants down to her mid-thighs. Masturbating. Eyes closed. Making noises and everything. I just don't understand how people can do this kind of thing and just not care. Edit. Not trying to be insensitive to those with mental illness. Honestly, I was just thinking about how I would be mortified if even one person saw me doing that. Let alone a bunch. A good reminder to be grateful today that I have the capability and awareness to choose not to masturbate on a public train. From afar I saw a man put something in another guy's drink while he was talking to his friends. I didn't think he knew the guy, so I was appalled that I actually saw that. I walked up to the guy with the drink and told him and the bartender. The preparator vanished. But it has made me paranoid now about going out. Good on ya for alerting the bartender. Witnessed a homeless man jacking off on a bench on a very busy street with a blanket over him attempting to hide it. How much did it cost you to watch? When I was a little kid, I saw a man throw his dog over the guardrail into a rushing river. No one stopped him and it has stuck with me forever. I saw a homeless man F-king his dog under a bridge. Guess it wasn't so much public, but I sure didn't want to see it. Reach into their pants while waiting in line and perform a deep arsehole scratch before paying for something. Was riding with a co-worker after eating lunch around 2 PM. We drove around the side of another restaurant where we notice a guy in a chef's jacket standing outside his car, kind of blocking himself with the door. I suppose we startled him, and he spun around exposing his downed pants and boner. We saw a kitchen employee jacking off in the parking lot of his restaurant. How else did you think they made the secret sauce? Guy on the L in Chicago had his pants around his thighs, no underwear, and was touching himself through his dingy white t-shirt about 18 inches away from this poor woman. She was in a seat shielding herself with her knees up to her chin and her purse against her face. Two heroes took him by the shoulders and pressed him up against the car door until the next stop, where they pushed him out. Edit. When I was about 12, I went to the city with my family to go to a basketball game. I live in the suburbs, so I am not familiar with city life and what it entails. A bit before the game, my family was just coming out of a restaurant when I saw two old homeless people F-king on a bench. People just walked by like it was nothing, but to me at the time, it was scarring. I'm on the rowing team and my boat is rowing under the bridge as usual when these kids on the bridge waited for the right moment that we would pass under and just pissed all over us. Our coxswain sort of saw it coming since the kids were aligning themselves with our boat, but just fully realized when they started unzipping. By then it was too late to shift course. Our backs faced the bridge as we rowed through, so we had no idea what was going on at first. But man, their piss smelled awful and we just had to continue our 90-minute practice in urine-soaked clothes. FCK those kids. Edit. Just to clarify to everyone, jumping in the Christina River is the worst thing you could do. Saw a guy with one leg take a shitty on the hood of a car. TBH, I'm more impressed by his balance than anything else, lol. England vs Wales rugby match while at university. I am Welsh and this was a Welsh university. We were watching in the bar and Wales beat England. So everyone was on a high. I decide to go for a pee and see that one of the urinals has a bucket full of pee underneath it. I mean brimming. I avoid this urinal. Like a good boy. An England fan then comes in. Angry about the loss. Sees me wearing a Wales rugby shirt. Tells me to F off. Then this asshat grabs the bucket and throws the whole thing at me. Drenching me in the piss of about 40 different dudes. Ruined the day. Ruined the win. Very vile. Very disgusting. Edit. Who would have thought that me getting tanked by a bucket of piss would be my top rated comment? I was in a reception area of my local council office waiting to see someone when a young couple with their toddler walked in. The man asked to see someone and they sat down. The lady on reception must have glanced at the man because he got up, walked to her and asked what she was looking at. She ignored him. He then told her if she did it again she would receive a mouthful of spit in her face. Security was called and he was asked to leave. After some exchanged words the man went towards the door. As he walked out he shouted Osobik. Hither. And to my shock his partner stood up and walked out behind him. The most vile human acting in the most disgusting way. A woman F-king herself with a handle end of what looked like a kind of homemade broomstick. Outside El Polo Loco on Sunset Boulevard. I was walking down the street when a man about 10 feet in front of me stepped off the curb. Pulled down his shorts. Bent over and arched a stream of liquid tea about a foot out. Right onto the busy sidewalk. When you gotta go. You gotta go. But he could have at least sprayed away from people. Saw someone shitting in the middle of the street at around 9 PM in San Francisco. Ah. Tenderloin. Beat his child in the car parked directly in front of the store with a flip-flop. He straight up hit her in the face with it multiple times. She was trying to cover herself so he hit her hands. He'd reach all the way back and beat the F-king soul out of her and you could hear her cry in the car. Not something I witnessed. But something I did. When I was 13 I projectile vomited on a subway platform holding probably 200 people at Grand Central Station in New York City. I had just finished a lukewarm hot cocoa. I didn't hit anyone. But I figure it must have been the most vile, disgusting thing one of those people has seen in public. Dude, it's New York City. That probably wasn't even the most disgusting thing they'd seen that day. Two homeless people bumping uglies in a bus booth. Next to a high traffic intersection. I saw a drunk guy spits out his Feljum. I attended the New Year's celebration on Copacabana Beach in Rio de Janeiro. It was amazing in so many ways. And truly a once in a lifetime experience. Towards the end of the night, as drunkenness was at an all-time high, and available porta potties were at an all-time low, we watched numerous people just squat down and drop a deuce. Some were kind enough to dig a little hole. Other people left it right on top for the world to see. This wasn't one or two instances. We probably saw a dozen people do this. Walking home was like walking through a minefield. As a side note about how terrible humans are, something like 15 million pounds 315 tons of trash was removed the next day. Edit. I grossly misremember the amount of trash. I once saw a woman drop her cigarette into a puddle of piss. Fish it back out and try to light it for a good while with it in her mouth. Then when she finally realized it was too soaked through to light properly, she put it back into her carton. Finger bash his 150 kilograms MRS on the way to an AFL game in a packed train. People would rather be jammed into the armpit of an overweight sweaty dude than be next to that massive lady moaning. I was almost crushed by the scurry of people noping the FCK away from that, so I don't blame them. 337 pounds. So I work third shift in a 24H fast food chain and I have a daily visitor I'll call Brian. Brian is 69 and had a stroke 3 years ago, so he doesn't listen or answer very well and generally ignores everyone. Every time he goes outside for a cigarette, he'll come back in and proceed to cough obnoxiously loud with all his might every couple of minutes and completely gross out other guests. Every night. I've grown used to it, but damn, it's brutal. I worked at Tim Hortons. We had a regular that was clearly mentally disabled. One day he decided to lean rhythmically against the order counter. Basically like a standing pro-masturbation session. His face revealed that he definitely came. Then he spoke and a chunk of chewed food flew out of his mouth onto the counter. I didn't serve him. I got in trouble from the shift manager. I didn't care. Someone on the bus kept violently coughing up phlegm into a handkerchief. Then locked eye contact with me. Smiled and proceeded to slowly lick the shitty of the handkerchief. Without breaking eye contact. I was at a pretty busy movie theater and I watched a guy coming out of the bathroom with a large soda in one hand and a plate of pretzel bites in the other. He pulls the door open and hip checks it to keep it open. A single pretzel bite falls off the tray onto the highly trafficked men's room floor. Like right in that line of sticky footprints that forms in a really busy restroom. Just picked that thing up and popped it right in his mouth. Might as well just lick all the urinals at that point. It was only one little nugget of food. Let it go. Man. Let it go. 1. I used to work in a really bad part of town and one afternoon driving home from work I saw some random guy. Most likely hopped up on drugs. Stick his hand down his throat and vomit all over the sidewalk next to our car. 2. During Christmas time some lady straight up changed her baby on the table in the food court of the mall. Didn't wipe it down or anything. Told the custodial crew. They didn't do anything. Not exactly in public. My grandmother hated the birds that made a nest in the tree in her front yard. She told my dad to get rid of them. My dad saw there were baby birds in the nest. He tossed the nest and the baby birds into a garbage bag and slammed it repeatedly on the ground. I'm still f***ing horrified. While I was in the lifeguard stand at a public pool, I had to watch two people f***ing in the hot tub. My dudes. We drain it for cleaning once per month. You could have either waited a couple of weeks or gone in there 3 days earlier. Some guy and his kids were in the parking lot coming up to my store. Kids are boy and girl. Around 8 or 9. The boy stops the man about halfway up the parking lot and motions to him. Dude pulls the boy's pants down. Pulls out a log of shitty. Tosses it to the ground. Then kinda digs in the kid's butt crack with the side of his hand. Then put the kid's pants back on and comes into the store and starts shopping. Without washing his shitty hand or taking the kid to the bathroom. Like the world and God didn't just see what happened. I had to take a break to compose myself, then came back and Lysoled everything I could get to in the store. I felt so bad for the cashier that had to ring him up. Although the most disgusting thing I've seen someone do, they didn't mean it. On a school trip from AUS to France. We were wandering around Paris in some spare time. One of the guys with us wasn't feeling well and it climaxed as we entered the Galeries Lafayette. A very prominent shopping building. In the middle of the crowded area. Next to all the most expensive makeup stands. Our mate rushed to the closest bin. Which was at the entry exit of an escalator. He projectile vomits into the bin. Which was one of the bins that had holes from the side and not the top. This meant that he was shooting vomit into and through the bin onto the floor as a buttload of rich French shoppers had to move around the mess while using the escalators. Not fun. Wearing Crocs with business socks. Saw a homeless guy shitting in between the flowers in a garden bed near Pier 15 in Manhattan. A guy dug a small hole, probably an inch or 2 in diameter. Pulled his pants down and started f***ing my lawn. I didn't do anything at first cause I was so amused that someone would even do this. Then I called the cops. Man, that man had some stamina. I didn't see, but back in the 7th grade. A guy in my year was caught jerking off in class and also got suspended for grabbing the teacher's ass. I saw a man reach down and start scratching his butthole through his trousers. Evidently not satisfied, he then put his hand down under his trousers and underwear and began really digging in there. I've seen things that you could probably argue were worse, but that's the one that stays in my mind most vividly because he was so nonchalant about it. He just did it right there in a relatively busy town center in broad daylight. I was at a Waffle House at 4:30 in the morning and saw an older Mexican couple seated beside one another. The wife was popping pimples on the husband's back. There's a man at my work who hacks unlike anyone I've ever heard hack before. Then he proceeds to spit his ludges into his trash can so loud that you can hear it hit the bottom. Then he tosses his trash can back, which also makes an obnoxiously loud sound. Keep in mind we work in a very quiet office. His hacking almost sounds exaggerated, but he does it literally all day. Every day. I want to tell him to shut his door and take a f-king Mucinex. It's f-king foul. I smoked for years and I don't even hack like that. If you have to hack like that, close your door. Not exactly vile but gross as hell. I took Chinese food back to the restaurant the next day because it was hard as rock when it arrived. I was in Venice. Lots of people pee in the canals, so that's not especially bad. What got to me was the woman holding her 2-year-old son up at arm's lengths, raised high like f-king Simba from the opening credits of The Lion King, while he dropped Tro and pissed in the canal. Saw a homeless guy pick up a piece of bread from a trash bin and eat it without hesitation. He then proceeded to pick up a used paper napkin from the same trash bin and wipe his lips with it. It was the classiest trashy act I've ever witnessed. When I was a bank teller, I had a guy stare at me straight in the eyes while he pulled a long string of thick snot from his nose into his mouth. I'm gagging just typing this out. Close bracket. I saw a homeless woman lying on the ground in front of a storefront, downtown Chicago. During rush hour, ass face to the street with a huge pool of shit behind her. I saw a drunk man in London place his bare pizza slice on top of a public bin. Pause and then eat a bite before putting it back down and then repeating until he had eaten it all. The bin tops in London tend to be covered in garbage juice and birch tea. He was also using his hands to prop himself up on the bin using the rim. I took a photo of him and he chased me for quite some time until a closing bar let me in to escape out of the back when a taxi came by. Once I saw this old grandma lady waiting in the bus stop. The bus stop is all made of glass and it has those perforated benches on it. So I was passing just being the bus stop and this lady starts peeing on the bench, like with her butt cheeks splayed on the glass. Needless to say that the pee spread all over the bench and it looked like Niagara Falls. Not sure if this counts as public, but I was at a party with some people from my high school. We all graduated a year or two before. Anyway, we found out that a guy was cheating on his girlfriend at this party and the girl's best friend started drunkenly going off. She is known for her crazy antics, but I watched this girl scream, "Go off. You're a f-king asshole" type stuff. This is very Arthaphopan-esque part. She just kept screaming and screaming. People are holding her back. Then she proceeded to unzip her jeans, took out her bloody tampon, and threw it at his face. I caught a man with his hand elbow deep in his girlfriend's pants, clearly fingering her. He pulled his hand out so fast when he realized I noticed he must have sprained his elbow. For the 5 people who may not know where this took place, Walmart. Saw someone trying to shoot up heroin by injecting it into their groin, and it wasn't going well. I have a pretty bad needle phobia as well, so it really gave me the shivers. Saw the rare 1/1 million schizophrenic violent crime. A man taking a pickaxe to the back of a random guy's head right as it started snowing. I remember the snow turning red. I was 12 and on my way down to P.E. My school was multiple buildings in a city. The school lied about what happened. And my older sister, a senior at the time, came to pick me up and asked if I knew what happened. And explained what really happened.